Welcome to Centaur Financial Services Podcast. The information provided on and made available through this video and podcast does not constitute as financial product advice. The information is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice. We recommend that you obtain your own independent professional advice before making any decision in relation to your particular requirements or circumstances.
Hello and welcome to the latest version of our podcast. I'm Nick Georgopoulos and I'm joined today by our Managing Director Hugh Robertson. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been receiving a lot of questions in our client meetings, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk through some of those frequently asked questions and share that with our community. So I've got a few of these questions here today. I want to keep this as quick as possible, so setting a limit of 10 minutes for this session today. Now, if you've had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Hugh, you might know that is quite a challenging task, so we'll try to keep him under control. But I'll kick off with the first question for us today. So Hugh, I've heard there is a best month to retire in Australia. Is this true? And what is the best month?
I'll try and keep my answers quick. It's
Please.
an interesting question because there isn't really a best month per se. But if we were to say what is the best month to retire, you're really looking around December, January. And the reason for that is if you're on, for example, $150,000 a year and you've gone halfway through the year, you've earned around $75,000, but your tax has been like you're earning $150,000. So then come year end, when you do your tax return, you're going to get a better refund from the ATO.
Yep, just due to that withholding tax, pay-as-you-go tax.
Yes.
Great, perfect. All right, next question. How much money can you have and still get the Australian pension?
Okay, so this one, we've just recently had some changes in July 1. The clients would have got a good email that we sent out.
Yes.
So as a homeowner, you're allowed around, as a couple, $986,500.
Yes.
Thereabouts. And if you're a single as a homeowner, you're allowed $656,500.
Yes, and those have recently changed as well. So as of 1st of July, as a couple of homeowners, that's increased by about $32,500, that upper threshold.
Yes.
Which means more and more people are starting to get access to that age pension.
Yes. And I think if you're the non-homers, just to kind of cover off on those guys,
Yep.
Couple 1.228,500.
That's correct, yes.
And for the single non-homer, it was 898,500.
Yes.
So again, increases. So what that means is clients who have not been eligible for age pension, check out now if you are eligible.
Yeah, correct. And as that couple non-homer, they're probably got more of the uptick in assets threshold there. It was about 50,000 increase in allowable assets that could have
Yes.
and now have access to that pension.
So quite generous.
Very generous. So definitely something, if you haven't been eligible before in the past, definitely something to start looking into and talk to your advisor around as potential planning strategies that we could look at for that as well.
Yes.
All right, back on task. Next question. What's the average return on investment for a balanced share portfolio, typically over the past 10 years?
Good question. The answer out the gate would be around the 8% mark,
Yes.
8.5%. We've had, although it never felt like, year by year, it never felt like it was good times. With the really low interest rates that we had, growth assets did really, really well over
Yes.
that last 10 years. So the thing to be careful with is what actually is a balanced fund. So
Yes.
this is something we talk about internally
Not
a
all
lot.
balanced profiles are created the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it's really looking behind the wrapper and seeing, okay, well, is my balanced fund, what's that allocation of growth assets to defensive assets?
Yes.
Because we've seen some, we won't name names, but some that say they're balanced, 92% are in growth assets, 8% defensive assets.
Yes.
There's no way in the world that constitutes balanced
No,
to us.
exactly. And more traditionally, we would probably say that a balanced portfolio sits around 60 or 65% in growth assets.
Yeah.
So if we're saying 95, you're quite aggressive in that investment profile.
That would fit an aggressive profile
Yes.
to us. So that's balanced, 65 to 70% allocation. We'd expect the last 10 years it's done about 8%.
Yep, great answer. Okay, I've heard of dollar cost averaging. What is it and why is it a strategy that advisors use?
So this one, again, a good question because sometimes when we go to these investment conferences, we ask other advisors, do you dollar cost average?
Yeah.
Just this week I was at one and I asked the clients from these big institutional wealth management firms and they don't dollar cost average typically. So
Interesting.
crazy.
Yeah.
So dollar cost averaging is the process by if you've got $100, rather than putting $100 in the market on day one and then hoping that it
Yes.
goes up, we know that hope is not a strategy,
No.
and we try and be disciplined in our approach and patient in our approach. So dollar cost averaging is really taking that $100, instead of putting it in straight away, we might put it in over 5 months.
Yep.
So $20 each month. What it does there from the perspective of discipline and patience is we kind of get clients that are actually hoping that the market goes down when they initially invest so that they can get more units or more shares bought with their $20 allocation.
Yes.
So it's a really good strategy to say break that $100 over 5 parcels monthly into the market, and you're probably, I think we've talked about this and you've got stats.
Yeah. So just looking at it recently, so if we're looking at investment markets today, using the ASX 200 as an example, so an index for that matter, if you were to invest at the start of February to today, lump sum, rather than using the dollar cost averaging strategy, your investment would be down about 2.7%.
So the client's not happy with that.
Not happy with that.
Okay.
So you've gone all in, start of January. If you look at a month and a half later, middle of March, and you were to invest a lump sum, your investment would be up about 5.6%.
Okay.
So
it's about a 7% swing just from a timing.
correct. And if you're paying attention to the markets, we haven't really felt that 7% realistically. It's been quite consistent over that long period of time, realistically.
Yes.
But that's where the power of dollar cost averaging starts to come into effect, because I'd be happy with a 5.6% return, but if I'm looking back at that negative 2.7, you start to have a bit of anxiety around how markets are performing.
And from that perspective, you might now think it's a bad investment.
Correct.
Although it's the exact same investment as the 5.6 positive return.
Yes.
It was just at the timing of when you went in.
Yep,
So to circumvent that, dollar cost average.
exactly right.
Okay.
Good. All right. Can I still contribute to my super when I retire?
Yes, you can. Retirement age is always a myth, and it seems it's something we talk about a lot. If you've got enough passive income to live the lifestyle you want, you can retire at 50. There's this whole FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early movement of people who are super frugal retiring really early. So yes, you can retire when you want, and you can allocate to super up to certain age bands where the smart guys like you and Bobby know this well and truly. But so what, up to 75 with non-concessionals?
Non-concessional contributions up to 75.
Which was a recent change.
Yep, that was 1st of July 2022. That was increased by 5-6 years.
Yep.
And then for the personal deductible contributions where you're claiming a tax deduction, that's 67. However, there's work tests and whatnot that come into that. So whilst the answer off the front is yes, there is an asterisk that sits next to that. So definitely something when you're talking contributions, you need to talk to your advisor or a professional about, just to make sure that, one, the contribution makes sense, it's going towards the goals that you're trying to achieve,
Yes.
and also the eligibility requirements around that.
So this is our general advice disclaimer.
Exactly, that
moment.
is a general advice disclaimer.
Speak to
right
us
there.
about it so that we can make sure that you're going to meet the rules, requirements, and it's appropriate to you.
Yes.
And at that non-concessional contribution up to 75, there are some limits at the upper end of plus 1.5, over $1 million.
Yes, exactly right.
Really be careful.
And that's based on total super balance, right?
Yes.
And these limits are increasing. So if you're listening to this podcast in 2025, those numbers may be different. So
Yes.
just something to keep an eye out for, talk to a professional about. General advice.
And keep our compliance team
Yes,
happy.
thank you.
Very good.
Alrighty, next question. How much do you need for an SMSF or a self-managed super fund? And what can you invest in a self-managed super fund?
Okay, so with the ATO has kind of always tried to put out determinations of how much you need. Is it 500,000? Is it 250,000? Is it 100,000?
Yeah, so that's interesting because last year the number was 500,000. ASIC put that out, and then a few months later they retracted that statement.
Okay.
So interesting. So I wouldn't say there is a number,
Yes.
but there is the need to understand, well, why are you investing in a self-managed super fund? It is a structure that comes with flexibility. So you are paying for the flexibility from a fee perspective, and those fees based on the balances within that fund just need to make sense and add up.
Yes. So, and understanding, I suppose, from that point of view, a lot of younger people are starting self-managed super funds nowadays because they like the control aspect.
Yes.
They want to be able to maybe invest in crypto. Again, not something we would touch. But they might also want to go into property. They might want to go into collectibles, cars, antiques, coins, wine. There's a whole array of things you can invest in. The majority of times we don't see clients wanting access to those because a lot of those assets that I've just mentioned don't actually produce income. So when I'm retiring, income is what I need. Passive income is what I prefer.
Yes.
So the self-managed super fund, there is sometimes a bit of a myth around it's a better investment vehicle. It's not necessarily better, it's just different. So there is no minimum balance that you need to start at SMSF, but you've really got to check if it's appropriate for you because a lot of our clients that have had self-managed super funds, they really don't enjoy the reporting and the accounting obligations that go with it. And what we've been able to sort of see is that they can go as an in-between into something like a wrap platform, which still gives them the direct shares, international shares, managed funds, ETFs, etc. So it still fulfills what they actually think they need an SMSF to have to utilise as an investment strategy where they can actually get that in a wholesale kind of wrap platform environment.
Correct. All right, last question. When can I access my superannuation and what are the benefits of retirement planning?
Okay. Retirement planning, we've got a bias in saying that we think that everyone should plan for their retirement. It seems like the diligent thing to do. I remember years ago people spent more time planning their trip and spending more time on holidays than they looked at their superannuation and planned for their retirement. So that seems a bit crazy to us. So retirement planning is always important no matter how young you are. And we have so many clients that say, I wish we had have started this sooner. So that's the message for people to tell their children, okay, start sooner, get your money working for you, and this compound interest is really going to take care of itself. When can I access my superannuation? There's 10 conditions of release. The most common one is you cease work and you're over age 60.
Yeah.
So that is the main one. And then with regards to that, there are other, if you are working past sort of 65, you can still continue to work and access your super.
Yes, and then there's that in-between ground, right, where you're between 60 and 65, you can access your superannuation, but there's limitations that are involved with how much you can access. So I guess the planning stage, it starts to build out that roadmap of how you're going to retire, starts to build out what your needs are, because a lot of people entering retirement don't know how much do I need to spend, then you're sort of working backwards from there. So biggest thing about retirement planning, I think anyway, is it gives you that peace of mind and clarity about, okay, well, now I know what I want to achieve and I know the roadmap in order to get there.
And I think that's something that's central we very much value is that it passes the sleep at night test.
Exactly.
So to know that you've got confidence that you're going to hit your retirement goals, really that's a load off to just be able to say, okay, cool, I can do that. And maybe now that brings forward the ability you can bring forward retirement, or it means you don't need to put as much into super right now and you can travel more, or you can really enjoy that transition into that next phase of retirement, which, for a lot of clients is going to last 30 years.
Correct.
So the retirement planning aspect of that is more important than ever because you're going to live longer than ever.
Yes. Okay, that's where I'm going to wrap it. We may have gone over that 10-minute limit today, but thank you for joining us. If there are any other questions you'd like us to ask in future podcasts, please reach out to us. But until then, we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.